And welcome back to the Big Cheese Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Corbin, filling in for DeAndre because he's out in California doing some stuff for his new startup. I am the 15th best moderator. Thank you very much. Actually, I'm probably like the worst moderator of all of moderators. And so today we're going to be talking about our predictions, except for Jacob because he doesn't have any, our predictions of what AI is going to happen within the next 10 years. So next week and the week following, we're actually going to have two very pragmatic shows. It's going to be about marketing for one, and then the other is going to be personal finance. So we figured let's step back and try to have a little bit loosey-goosey one that's not as pragmatic and might not have any bearing on the future whatsoever. So with that, who would like to start on a prediction of where AI is going to go in the next 10 years?
Apple's stock's going to be at 1,000 and have split twice.
So you came in today with the show talking very excitedly about Apple.
Yeah,
what was it?
Well, their stock popped, and I honestly, so two things. Apple last year when they said they were doing the Apple Vision Pro, I thought that was going to be something big, and their company did well, financially, obviously they always do, and then their stock just steadily rose after that announcement up through the release. Then it's kind of like subsided a little bit, and we've been doing so much research on AI, and my whole narrative that I've been pushing in on Reddit, in this podcast, into Jacob, to everybody, is that Apple's going to do well in the AI space. I actually posted on Reddit about Realm, and someone responded, "Hey, great, but are they going to make money?" I said, "Well, what's the market of AI spend and revenue in the next 10 years?" I just put a huge chunk to Apple. And so I do not have a lot of information, but I know that they announced or they are putting into production their M4 chip. Okay. And that's the AI powered chip. So that's what's going to hopefully ship with these models and be able to do AI on the device, right? So I'm sure
that would make sense. Because we were talking before where they were saying that they were seeing the speeds about the same, the same speeds as you were getting on device that you would get with ChatGPT. So it would make sense that it would have to be a new chip, and it's going to be a new chip that we're all going to have to buy.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, right? Like that's where you get I don't know what the device refresh rate is for Apple, but you look at like the last couple of years, it's been like, okay, the lens, it's got a lens that's got 3 lenses, and you know what I mean? It's
I don't know if we talked about it last week,
M1
but
M2.
Yeah, I just saw an article that was like, all right, the people just aren't going out and buying new iPhones anymore, as like they were. Right? It's more commoditized. Like, okay, what's the big difference? 16 is going to have a great camera, cool. But like, there's nothing about it. Now you're talking AI enabled, and like
it's going to force me to get
Apple's
the
been in the lab, I think, probably since last year, around November or whatever, when we talked about when ChatGPT came out.
They're spending a ton on research and development. By the way, I mean they just killed their car and the other.
They moved the car to the AI on the robotics, the people.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
But
I haven't heard anything about the car getting moved.
So they totally kiboshed their car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
No more iCar.
So if you're a bear on Apple, you look at some of their failed endeavors, and Steve Jobs ain't coming through that door, Johnny Ive even.
All right.
But yeah, I think for the next 10 years, we need to talk a little bit more, I guess, with a little bit more grandiose. But I came in with my chest puffed out because I want Apple.
It's the M4 is the next 10 years.
Yeah, and I have an M1, and like I'd love to see what the newer ones can do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The fact that they're coming out with these two every year,
it's crazy.
Is a very impressive feat.
So for people that don't know, Apple took control of their chip manufacturing and chip design.
Right.
About almost 4 years ago now.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And they started releasing their own chips, and those chips are using the ARM architecture, which is what you typically see in like Microsoft or Windows machines, right?
Windows is x86, but the ARM was typically, I believe, on like more.
It was more devices.
Yeah, more like on device.
Okay, well, I think like the Surface. I don't know, whatever.
So you would have like tablets and things that had like low power requirements would leverage ARM because it was so efficient.
Which is why the M1s or the M series is so great because you can have like 24 hours of battery life and be running it the whole time.
Is anybody running an M3 here?
I'm running M1.
Okay, so you got an M1. I've got an M2. You've got an M2.
M2,
Yeah. So I would be curious. I know that when they did the M3, there was some memory bandwidth was actually reduced, and so some people were kind of complaining about that versus the Max M2 or whatever. So I'll be curious to see. What
I haven't heard a fan going off on a Mac.
No.
In
I get
5 years.
Every once in a while I'll get like weird video playback issues. It'll be like really choppy in the beginning, and then it's fine. But that's the trade-off.
It's almost like, what do we call it? The hardware cliff thing. What's that concept you were mentioning where the hardware's ahead of the software?
Oh, yeah, the overhang.
The overhang, and I think we're at I think what Apple's doing to the ecosystem is they're going to create this big overhang.
It is funny to me though how we keep having this ebb and flow where it's like. And you look at it in technology all the time. Netflix did it where they were like, okay, we're going to take the DVD that you get delivered on device and we're going to move that to the cloud, right? And then they actually had a plan where they were going to store a bunch of their assets closer to the actual destination. Okay. So they're like trying to work with like Comcast or different ISPs to be like, we're going to have a little Netflix server here that hosts all the popular movies in this region. So you constantly see this like back and forth. Where, like Google tried to take gaming GPU to the cloud with
Strata,
yeah,
something like that.
And then like ChatGPT comes out and it's like, well, because the chips didn't exist on for computers, they weren't the right types of chips or powerful enough. They're like, okay, we're going to put AI in the cloud. And now Apple's thinking, you know what? It would actually make more sense. Or at least that does appear to be their strategy of like put it on device because one, we sell the devices, so we want to sell more devices, and two, it's going to be faster. There's just hardly any way to compete if you have the things. I mean, it's just expensive.
So 10 years, I was thinking about this on the way, and this is the most random question I had for you, is you see, like during this whole AI thing that's been going on the past 6 months, this revolution, Bitcoin's gone from $20,000 to $74,000 per coin.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, is there something going on like that's significant in terms of how the world is it significant in how the world's going to work in the next 10 years? And does AI and the blockchain have any sort of relationship in the next 10 years?
It's an interesting question. So when all of the crypto came out, I was very bullish on crypto. I thought it was going to change the world, So I think I put about a total of like $3,000 into crypto, probably 10, 11 years ago, right? So that's the max. Now, so I'm sitting on a pretty nice bag of crypto.
Nice.
At this
point. Of course you are.
Well, now full disclosure though, so funny little backtrack. Funny story is I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have a hard drive that's got 3 Bitcoin on it, right? And this is when Bitcoin was at, I don't know, 50 grand or whatever per coin. And I'm like, all right, I got to find this. And I went on a mission, and there's a whole Facebook post of this mission as I'm going through. And there's a photo of all these hard drives all over my desk. And I literally bought a thing that you can just pop these hard drives in to check them. And I went through and checked 20 hard drives. I finally found the one that had the wallet on it. And I open up that wallet and I see the transactions for sending 2 or 3 different Bitcoin. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I open it and I'm like, oh yeah. That's when I bought magic mushrooms off the dark web for three friggin' Bitcoin.
Oh no.
And it was like, $300. It was like $100 per coin. Yeah. And is when I spent that. And so I had managed to spend 3 Bitcoin.
I'm so glad I asked you this question.
Magic mushrooms.
Oh my gosh. My buddy had a similar story, not quite as dramatic, but he was trying to buy some coin that wasn't on any real exchange. I don't know. I always kind of stayed away from it because it seemed shady to me. Yeah. I was like, I don't understand. You have to get this website, and then anyway. So he tried to buy some coin 3 or 4 times, and it costs like $100 or something every time you try to buy it, and it kept failing. Right. And he said, forget it. I'm just going to move on. Well, if he had gotten that transaction to go through, he would have made like $2 million or something. I was like, that doesn't seem right.
No, it's so bad. Oh, so then the other one too is so Nomi, which was my app that let you track everything. I ended up moving from Firebase to blockchain, or a Blockstack is what it was originally called. And it's basically a decentralized data store that you could have like this completely private store of data, and you could have data in there. So I integrated it with Nomi, so they ended up giving me like 20,000 tokens of the XTX token because of this. And so I've just been sitting on it, never even thinking about it. And I just went and looked the other day, and they're like at $3.50 per coin right now. And I'm just like, woohoo! Like, there we go.
That was one of those actual useful coins.
Well, so what they're doing, which is kind of interesting, is they're a level 2 provider, but it's all built on on Bitcoin. So you can then stake your STX tokens, and they actually pay you in Bitcoin. So their entire thing is really tied to the actual Bitcoin system, but it brings contracts, it brings all the things that like Ethereum has, but it brings it to the Bitcoin blockchain. Anyway, this isn't a Bitcoin podcast.
Wait, but what was your prediction? Is it just Apple's going to...
Well, actually, I had a question. My prediction was just please buy Apple stock. This is a public service announcement. No, what I was reading the show notes, and it's just this discussion around where Apple's going is where I look always. And Apple, and what's the conversation right now is not just... I'm going to chat with this thing proactively, and I'm going to have a chat stream, right? It's reading, it's reacting, and it's doing things. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that with Rabbit, and I see that as the next evolution. And I don't think it's going to take 10 years, but I think the impact is going to be felt over the next 10 years. Yeah. So what does the world look like when you don't really have to do much?
Yeah.
So that was one of my predictions, is that UI moves from this thing where you have to go and interact with it to it now just becoming more of a thing that's confirming with you. Like when you're interacting with these AIs and these robots and the agents and all of this stuff, it's going to just be more of, hey, I need this. And it'll be like, all right, do you want this and do you want that? And so I think that the whole UI space completely changes. And Rabbit's a good example of that, right? Like Rabbit's taking the UI and is going to automate it themselves and then basically confirm, hey, do you want this one from Uber Eats or whatever it is?
In a world where UI doesn't matter, is someone need to invent a mid-tier UI stack that only interacts with AI agents?
Well, that Zapier, whatever the hell it is, came out with their, Center or I don't know, their AI bot connector tool. So I tried it out last night because my buddy was asking me about it, and I was like, I don't know, I haven't used it yet. But it was one of their announcements a while back that's kind of starting to roll out. But essentially, some of the tooling we've built, you could do using the Make. We've talked about Make.com. Right. We've talked about Zaps and all that. This is like the culmination of those, where you can go on there, and I was like, okay, what would be useful for me? Because if I actually got use out of it, I might actually build it. And it was, when a JIRA ticket's created, or like when someone comments on it, then maybe you could take that comment with the ticket and then write a response to it, or generate some actions to derive from that. And you can, that's the whole thing is like, it ties into different data sources. So you could do an email. I tinkered by building a custom Gmail triggering thing where it's like email comes in, send it to OpenAI, do some things. Well, you can do a lot of that with this new platform. So I do think, to your point, like that's probably, you'll see the proliferation of those types of platforms.
I think my question with those platforms, and obviously that's a great, that is, if I was going to pick like a SaaS tool, that'd be in the top 5. Yeah. Right. In terms of like just pure SaaS play for building a platform AI can interact with. However, the longest lasting and most successful platform is just the web in general and URLs, right? Yeah. And so, like, if you look at how an AI, a general intelligent AI being that is your assistant, that's proactive, that can do things on your behalf, like, is there a place for just the web there? You know what I mean? Like the web is a tool, and the standard just changes. Like schema markup, for example, when you're looking up hotel rooms or a menu. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think again, it's going to be how the AI pulls you into the discussion, right? It could be, hey, click. It's a text message. It says, hey, your anniversary is coming up. I've got 3 different ideas for you and your wife.
Yeah.
Here they are, and you can go to it and you can actually see it. Now that might be an app on your phone. It might be just a web app or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's where I see that this AI goes. It's going to pull you in.
Yeah.
Basically ask you, okay, which ones,
and of course Google and Apple are the two, and maybe Facebook are the ones most primed for that conversation.
Right.
Google already, I don't know if you guys have the Google app on your iPhones, but the personalized, maybe they're a little too personalized. I watched the show Invincible.
Yeah.
And almost every other day there's a article on my Google feed that's like Invincible season 3 or something that's Invincible related.
Yeah.
And like, I think we've talked about it before, but like that's personalized using machine learning, AI.
Yep.
And to your point, like, why not go a step further? Google has my calendar. They can see my significant other's birthday or friend's birthday. What I would love that. I want to do more personal things. I want to be more thoughtful, but it's like I kind of forget sometimes. 100%. Like it'll be like the day of, and I'm like, shit.
So
it's my 30th anniversary.
Bold prediction maybe then is if there's AGI and these things are trying to get things done for people, wouldn't they basically gravitate towards what people are also gravitated towards? So like to me, that would just promote general accessibility of that information.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think
like if you're building a website for your company and it's fast and it's accessible right now, like I feel like that's going to be a tool that will be successful for in 10 years still.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So like there's like lasting power in that.
Yeah.
And I think some of these proprietary platforms too, like you said, the leaders, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples. But I still think that bold prediction is there might be things that are just the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you could see so you're going to have an AI that should be able to consume websites.
That's
right?
kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah, yeah. Where this thing, because again, we as humans know what a button is. We know what a form field is. We know how to kind of go and navigate Amazon. There's no reason why you couldn't build a large language model that's basically like tightly integrated with the engine of a web browser, that it would know like everything that's going on.
And
with
it'll
this browser.
probably, but you made this point already, and I think another thing that's important is it probably makes making accessible websites just that much more valuable.
Right.
Because it's like if you don't use a button element on a button on a website, instead you use a span.
Exactly. It's a div. It doesn't fucking
and
know.
it might be able to infer that eventually,
Right.
but like the ones that use the correct markup and you're gonna get more value out of that.
So accessibility is really important for AI because AI can interpret and interact with accessible web elements more easily than it would a proprietary functionality or even a proprietary system that it has to learn the APIs for.
It's the same thing that you were talking about the other day, which is these contracts or these. What did you say? You have the standards of data exchange.
Yeah, the APQC standards where you basically just ground all of this on existing standards.
Well, you know what else? Go back to the Bitcoin comment. What's the path of least resistance for an AI entity? Going to Regions Bank and opening an account with a driver's license, or putting some tokens.
So that's another really interesting conversation would be does the AI end up leveraging Bitcoin or leveraging crypto as a means of exchanging value?
Well, it's going to go to the path of least resistance,
and it would be.
That's a much least resistant.
Which actually I didn't come prepared with any predictions, but all of these. This conversation has got me thinking about two things. So one, I'm both an optimist and a pessimist about the future, where it's like, okay, AI is most likely or already providing a bunch of efficiencies, and efficiencies comes profitability. With profitability, generally comes more money back to the shareholders and less back to the common people. But I do think something has to break at some point. Like, you can only make so much money. Maybe I'm just wrong, because capitalism is fun.
Well, we had that. We had that conversation.
Yeah, but like my point is, the first thing you had on this list today for the show notes was sentiment. General sentiment, especially in the U.S., is way down.
Yeah.
So people are skeptical of AI because they've seen this show before. This is a rerun where productivity goes way up and everyone's still laying off workers. Because why? Because they're beholden to their shareholders, right? So how long before we actually finally collectively catch on, and we're just like, no more. And we either, regulation or I don't know what that path looks like, but there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back.
So and my other prediction here is that what we're going to see is not a job apocalypse in 10 years.
Yeah.
We're going to see a job apocalypse, and it's going to happen where everybody's kind of going, oh, hey, I don't need all these people because I can have AI do this and do this and do this. But what I think is going to happen, the same thing that happened when we had the car, the Industrial Revolution, we had the cars, and we had all of a sudden entire new industries bubble up. And we're going to have a lot more efficiencies. We're going to have people are going to be coming up with entirely new things that we never thought of that will require people. Now, the question ultimately is it ever going to require as many people as it used to, because we now have AI to do a lot of that work. But so I think we're going to see a short-term, very painful process transitioning to this new world of AI powering everything. But at that same time, I think we'll eventually have this cross where it's eventually now going to go, more people are now getting hired by the new industries that have bubbled up because of what actually came out because of the AI.
I think that you make a good point, and it reminds me of the 2008 financial crisis. So there was a huge transformation in terms of the types of jobs people were working at when you pre-2008 and post-2008. You saw a huge rise in like the brew pub and the, you know what I mean, like the rest, like the micro restaurant. You know what I mean? Like that's the hipster thing became more like people were doing more with less and being more in that kind of breeded this like creative energy, right? Because people were like, you know what? I don't need to go in this rat race. I need to go figure out myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that that's potentially an outcome of all of this is like, what are you going to do with all this time?
Yeah.
Right. and maybe humans are creative beings and they figure out other things to do.
Right.
And part of what is probably going to happen, you already see it on social media. Like I've learned more about gardening and exercise and music and fixing things in the last 3 years because of social media and all the things that people post than I did in 20 years before that.
Right.
You know, and it's just like people are trying to kind of figure stuff out. I mean, Jacob's out here making sourdough bread.
Are you?
Attempting.
Dude, that's
this
awesome.
Friday will be my first. I've got the starter. I've read 100 articles. I've used ChatGPT and Gemini to give me the schedules. I've watched the video. You know, even JVM's giving me some advice. He does it every Sunday, he said.
But think about that, right? Like that's it goes back to like something my grandma told me. She was a very, very, she was an artist. She was a cook. She was a grandmother, mother, had tons of kids. And she always just told me, you know, people struggle with figuring out how to live. And like one of the ways that she did that was just by being very self-sufficient and creating and just being really efficient, especially with like, let's be honest, like money stuff, like doing more with less. I think people can, if you think, oh, there's just going to be people out on the street, nothing to do, I think that is not correct.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say short term, there'll be a lot of displacement, like you said, and we're going to have to figure that out because it's going to be an unfortunate side effect of, and we've talked about it many times on the show, of there's just no need for certain jobs anymore. And those people will be left for now, and hopefully as a country, as a at the world, we can figure out a way to come together and actually because people are creative. They're not meant to be the transcribers. Those are jobs better suited for computers, right? But there's still the coal miner situation where, okay, now what? These guys, they're primed for coal mining. That's what they learned. That's what they did for a living. People need something to do to feel valuable and to make money, right? But I will say, since I've been using AI, I've noticed a crazy improvement in my productivity, my organization, my ability to get unstuck is so much better now. Like when I start writing docs or start organizing my thoughts, it's like first thing I do is when I get stuck is go to ChatGPT or whatever. So
you go to Gemini.
I go to Gemini too.
Do you?
They're both so good though. Like I've started using both again. and ChatGPT is really good.
Yeah.
I forget what I used for yesterday. Oh, my taxes.
Okay.
Oh, really?
I hate doing taxes. I don't even do them. I give the stuff to someone to do.
Right.
I hate even
I was
doing
gonna
that.
say, wait a minute, hold on.
I hate even doing that. But I've
I
learned
love
more
it.
about taxes.
I love scanning everything in, getting my PDF, organizing it into folders, and going, see, you have everything.
Here's what I hate about it. I do too, actually. I love that part of it. What I hate about it is I've always relied on someone to do it. So every year it's the same thing. I'm like, oh shit, what do I need to give them again? So I go back and I try to figure out what I gave them last year and follow the email audit. I just went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, I'm doing my taxes, or I'm having someone do my taxes for me. What documents do I need?
That's great.
Your guy doesn't send you a packet?
They do, but it's like this list of everything that could ever happen, and it's horribly formatted, and I get anxiety looking at it.
I took a copy of that document and I literally crossed everything out that's not applicable, and it's like 90% of the
That's what I
items.
probably should have done, but I look at it and I'm like, none of this is applicable to me. So I just freaked out and didn't use it.
But I know ChatGPT is great for something like that.
I now have a Notion document that says, here is everything that as I was getting all the stuff, I decided never again will I have this anxiety. So I made a document last night of all the things that I delivered, all the LLCs and businesses that they take care of the K1s, or this guy does, or whatever. And now I'm like, okay, cool. This is more manageable.
I think Notion deserves to be in our prediction. I think Notion's a winner. Short and long term.
I love it.
We use, just for transparency, at our company we use Google Workspaces. We use Jira to manage our projects. We use GitHub and Bitbucket because we are in between, relationships there. We use Slack to communicate. No one at our company sends each other emails, so that's not a thing. We use. There's a platform called Bug Herd. It probably doesn't even deserve to be mentioned, but to collect bugs from customers on websites. But we want to use Notion, and Notion is a great kind of place to like puke out all your AI content and just stuff in general, and then figure out ways to organize it. Create landing pages for yourself, for your clients, and different things.
You shared some Notion stuff with us, and then I thought,
are you a Notion guy?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Tell us about your Notion footprint.
Yeah, so Notion. So I've gone through the journey of notes, like through every single one of them.
Yes, everyone needs to hear this.
I built one. It's called Belly Lint, which was the name of it.
You did.
And Belly Lint was it was basically my take on Apple Notes, but it was completely decentralized using Blockstack's decentralized storage engine. So it was completely private. You could go and do whatever, and it was this Markdown-driven thing, and it was great. I used it for about a year and a half. The only downside was the sharing aspect of it, and the sharing aspect is what is Notion's real secret sauce.
Yeah.
They've got a ton of secret sauce, but
That's what I was asking you today about it.
because so everything that's going on in Markdown or in Notion is Markdown powered, and I think that that's a critical thing here. Because like in Google Docs, right? Google Docs is using the old "what you see is what you get" kind of. Whatever.
Oh, so Notion's tables and
all
Jira,
of it,
all
of it is Markdown.
So there's a Markdown format that they prefer, like a Jira board kind of concept.
Well,
or
so
is that magic?
It's most likely their thing is probably a custom Markdown renderer, right? So you can have like some custom, Markdown components or whatever.
That makes it lightweight.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but what's great about it is, so you go and you copy your output from ChatGPT. That's always in Markdown for the most part.
Which is terrible into Google Docs.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and you can't do it into Google Docs.
Oh my God, you just changed my life.
So what you do is you copy it from there, you paste it into Notion, copy from Notion, paste it into Google Drive, and it works great. And that's exactly how I do all of our document notes. I've got to copy it from ChatGPT, paste it into Notion, copy from Notion, paste it into Google, and it works great.
So that'll hopefully be a short, but ChatGPT hack. Take your ChatGPT results. Don't copy and paste it directly into Google Docs. Go copy and paste it into Notion, which is a Markdown-based system. Then, if you really need to get it into Google Docs, copy it from Notion back over to Google Docs, and you just saved my life because I'm so sick of copying from ChatGPT into Google Docs and seeing it formatted terribly.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
absolutely
Okay.
horrible. Yeah. So no Notion, but So Notion has this sharing ability. It's got the team collaboration stuff.
And the
in it.
website for people that don't, a lot of people have don't know this. Notion, not .com.
Yeah,
.so.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
I know. Yeah. But in terms of having like a super flexible, very powerful, they've got so I have upgraded, so they do have their own AI that you can kind of interact with and
We
chat
have
with.
that now.
It seems to kind of suck though.
It's a little slow.
It's slow, but like
they'll get better.
It will definitely get better. But like when you're trying to ask it questions across your entire corpus of data, that thing went fucking haywire. It was just like, and I was asking like very specific questions, and it was like giving me the hallucinations that this thing did were just off the chart.
Have you? Well, I know you have because you introduced it to me. But are you still using Obsidian?
So I'm not using Obsidian anymore.
Okay.
What was
Obsidian is like Notion. Well, you tell it because you introduced it to me.
Yeah. So I started. So I had belly lint, and then I'm like, and I went back to Notion, and then I'm like, I still don't like that it's not private. So then I went to Obsidian, and Obsidian is an app that you're going to run on your Mac, Windows, Linux, I think, that stores it all locally on your
like
machine.
unstructured documents.
Exactly. It's a folder structure of Markdown. But they do have syncing. They have a bunch of plugins. They have a bunch of really cool features. They have a couple different Chat GPT kind of interfaces where you can then basically pull it in and interface with it. But I didn't think that they had anything that like spanned the entire corpus of all of it.
I wasn't sure. My take on Obsidian was it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just, but it's like an Android to me where it's like, it's too open-ended.
So that's a great
Notion
analogy.
Notion
is Apple,
yeah.
and Obsidian is, and that was my thing. Is like, if you want a phone to do whatever you want it to do, go with Android. If you want a phone that just works, but you have to follow its thing, go with Apple. Same exact thing. If you want notes that just work, go with Notion. If you want your notes where you have like all the crazy shit, you want calendaring, you want syncing, you want all this madness, go with Obsidian.
Notion released a calendar that integrates directly with Google.
I use it, yeah.
And I just started using it. Whoa.
Oh, it's great. My
favorite
what's your favorite feature so far? I know
the fact that my next meeting's link to go join the meeting is right there.
Whoa, seriously?
Dude, it's amazing. If you get the app on the Mac app.
You don't have to click the meeting invite. It's like your next meeting is a Teams meeting, click to join.
Oh, that's really
at the top, right? Which I agree. That is by and far the best.
You have to
feature.
give it literally permissions to do every single thing ever.
Right.
On your
and
Google
it gets your
workspace.
it does get your firstborn.
Yeah.
It literally, it's like it's like at the last one, it's like just basically everything.
Yeah.
That's my one beef with Notion is that it does have access to like everything.
That's a lot. So one thing that people don't realize is when you log in with Google, Apple, or X account on a separate platform, it's using a authentication protocol called OAuth, which is like basically like syncing some permissions it's giving the application to directly make API calls into that external app. Right. And to me, that's a very difficult proposition to regulate. You're leaving it up to the application to handle that. And then obviously like that's something to where, if you're basically potentially opening yourself up at some level to if that source application that you're giving the permissions to gets compromised, you might be in a little bit of trouble. But I mean, I think for me, typically, if I'm doing it with Google, I usually feel pretty okay with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Google somehow is just always going to win the auth war. By the way, like I don't know what they get out of that, but like authing with Google, it scares me, or it doesn't scare me, but it's weird to auth with Facebook or like with like Reddit or one of them the other day was GitHub, and I'm like,
one of the reasons is because. And that's the reason why Microsoft's probably second is because you can control someone's access to a Google workspace.
Sure. Yeah.
So if they're logging in with their account, they get terminated.
Yeah.
Versus like their Facebook account.
That's true. That's true.
Well,
it just feels like as a consumer that feels.
Right. Do you guys remember the first time you used Gmail?
Oh yeah, WiseDude3 at gmail.com because I'm the third wise dude.
I remember I was in the main library at IU. And I had logged into Gmail, and there was two computers next to each other. This guy, his name was Wes. He ended up being a really good designer, and I was like the coder. So he would design stuff while we were there, and I would try to code it like while we were working. And that's kind of how I learned front end dev. Right. But he would log into his Gmail, and the chat feature was there, and like they were A/B testing it. But for some reason, it went like 2 years before the chat list showed up on my Gmail.
Yep.
And I was always so mad. Everyone was sitting there chatting with each other, and I didn't get the feature yet.
I never liked their chat. Like
We used it all the time.
I don't know why. I never used. I was an AIM boy,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I was Skater Boy 08 or something.
I was Jebediah, like
I mean, that was
313.
Slack. That was Slack before Slack existed.
Yeah. Oh, but I want to go back to the Notion conversation real quick because I don't know if they'll be a winner, but I do think platforms that enable content creation and have a unified structure of their data are going to be the winners. Because sometimes what I'll do is I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll say, do this, but I want to output in like a Notion standard.
Yeah.
You know, they have a good marketplace for templates and a good base of that kind of baseline data set.
Right.
To pivot off of.
So lightweight data semantic representations of content win in the AI world.
So
because you can parse HTML quickly, you can parse through and render Markdown really quickly. So if you're doing things in that format, I feel like
and they're much more approachable for everyone. Like the accessibility, they win with accessibility.
So accessibility keeps coming up here, and that of course I'm totally slanted because you want that. You don't want 3 proprietary platforms to win and no one to have access to create anymore.
Yeah.
So I think, and this is one that I've been kind of noodling on. I've never actually said it out loud, so bear with me. That I think we get to a point where you almost have these like portable vector vaults, right? So I'm chatting with ChatGPT. I should basically just be almost like Open Search. If you guys remember, Open Search was just an open standard for being able to do search.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we have that? But it's vectorized, right? So I can go to ChatGPT, connect my Notion, connect my Gmail, connect my Google Drive. They all are an open search, which I can go and provide a prompt. It's going to do its own vectorization of the prompt. It's then going to go and search its data through all the vectors that exist in there and return the things that are relevant.
So for those that aren't familiar, vectorizing your data is the first step basically to get a large language model to be able to interact with it, but it's not standardized. Or is it standardized?
Well, so
I mean, like if I have a bunch of blogs, I can chunk it up in any way I want.
Well, you could chunk it up, but nevertheless, the end result's still going to just be an array of numbers, right?
That's true.
It's still going to be a vector.
So it's not that.
But it's not even that it's critical. Like, so when we would do the search for Notion, like ChatGPT doesn't really even give a shit about whatever their vector strategy.
It doesn't matter?
No. Because what they're going to do is
I would think that the format and the vector would be so.
But that's for Notion to do its search, right? So it's going to do the search and it's going to have its vector, and maybe it's a 726, dimension whatever array. But the query is going to come in. It's going to convert it to its own vector format, do the similarity search, or do a semantic, depending on how they want to do their search. Then that's just going to come back to, whatever, because that's all it really is here's the results. Now go and add that to your, to the large language model along with whatever the large language model says it needs to answer. But yeah, I mean, I think we might see a thing of where like you have this kind of portable vector search of all of your data because it's there. I should be able to search my tweets. I should be able to search my Facebook stuff. I should be able to search my Notion. I should be able to search my email for fucking sure.
Do you think, I hear like a lot of this centralizing and connecting all these platforms. Where does security play into this? Because, it's the same. It's actually and Google has overcome this, but it was one of the hangups of allowing Google to OAuth into everything that you have. Same problem, right? So once someone cracks my Google account, they now have cracked every app I've ever connected to that Google account, right? Essentially, but
the security side of that would absolutely be critical because especially if it's like here's your URL for your open search.
I think you touched on it though is the portable aspect. So one of the things that's interesting about portable is that you take it with you. And you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what, you talk about that like with the blockchain, or you talk about, certain things like not just being able to just access it unless it's something something you have, something you are kind of concept, like that 3-factor auth, or literally you're taking that and the only way to access it is physically, like something that you're.
Oh my God!
You know,
everyone's gonna lock themselves out of their data.
So what's funny is going back to Blockstack, like we were talking about the crypto, which is now just STX stacks. But that was kind of where they were going. It was called Gaia. Gaia Hub is the name of it, which is this decentralized storage that, as an application, you basically go and say, hey, can I have access to your storage? And you're like, yep, you can have access to this partition. And then I can just go and read and write, just like S3 almost. And so I wonder if it might be something even like that, where the portability is basically, it's accessible. I have to very specifically ask for permission. It's using end-to-end encryption and, elliptical curve, all this nonsense. So it's very secure. That I wonder if it might end up being something like that, where it's like, here's your data store, and Apple could even be primed for it, right? Like, here's your health data, and here's how. Well,
that's one of the portability thing is interesting to me because, the doctors, like, what's he gonna do? Like, you're actually at some point are gonna need to be able to like give someone the key, to the house,
right.
and that concept of uniformity. And how we exchange that data, and being able to do these critical things. Like if you basically you're like, hey, I can't guarantee your quality of care unless I have access to your records, which are on this vectorized blockchain personal thing. But that makes sense, right? Like they're gonna know everything that they need to know. Like in there, they're probably gonna be like, well, her insurance isn't gonna cover this because they were dealing with limited information, and we know through outcomes that if they have the full access to the data, the outcomes are better.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's a concept for sure, I think, where some of this really important information is going to need to be it has to be vectorized because the way to interpret and access that information is so archaic. Otherwise, you're looking through charts and I'm searching the email. Search, what's that? Like this thing's just like right up. You just ask it a question and it's right there.
Yeah.
So I think that the bold prediction is like access to data has to be done uniformly and in vector.
So the last one that I have, as we're running out of time, which is the big one here for me, is that I think that everything we're doing today, all of the AI work we're doing today, is 100% for the robots of the future, right? The being able to communicate with the large language models, the being able to, speak to it and have it be spoken back, is basically us slowly figuring out how do we give agency to these robots that are going to be sitting in our house, just like the Human TV show, or, any of the sci-fi data, any of the sci-fi shows where we had humanoid robots that we ultimately, in 10 years, we're either going to have like a generalized humanoid robot like what Elon's building, or we're going to have a bunch of like small little specialized robots that are just rolling around your house, picking up your dog shit or whatever.
If my toaster isn't AI enabled by the end of the decade,
I want it to come up to my room and be like, "Here's your toast," and just pop it out.
Yeah.
So that's my take. Is that everything we're doing though is really going to be for the robots of the future.
Yeah, and hopefully they're good.
I mean, the missing link with the robots, definitely. The biggest leap for sure, and you've seen it with the YouTube videos. Just search, AI robots, whatever. There's that video of that robot just basically doing any task it was asked on a kitchen counter. But like the dexterity piece, has been something that like Boston Science has been working on. But the issue is interpretation. The issue is visual and audio interpretation of what the human wants from the robot.
I agree that. I think that's a pretty good prediction, and I also agree that it's not going to be just one robot or just specialized robots. There will be a general purpose one.
Right.
I saw a video of drones with cameras, and I'm sure AI image detection, and they're picking peaches off a tree, and they're quite fragile, right, or soft. So it's got a little suction cup. It goes deep, and it goes like that, and then it carries it over, and it slowly drops into the thing.
We have like manufacturing level Like, I mean, that's basically what happened with Tesla. They built the best manufacturing
so they have the
automation process.
robot
Intel was planning on becoming completely automated or AI driven. Yeah, AI automated factories featuring collaborative robots, cobots. For some reason, cobots aiming to enhance manufacturing efficiencies. So yeah, I mean, like all these things that are labor's only going to get more expensive. And
restaurants, no question.
I'll add on to your prediction. I envision within 5 years, most people that have a household income of, let's say, $250,000 a year or more are going to have an Apple robot housekeeper assistant living in their home with them 24 hours a day.
What was the Jetsons robot? Anybody remember off the top of their head?
She was thick.
She was thick. Yeah.
Josie?
Yeah.
Was it
That sounds about
Rosie?
Rosie, yeah.
She had an attitude.
Yeah.
But you know that the interesting thing about Jetsons, you wake up, you literally go through this conveyor belt.
Yeah.
Of, it brushes your teeth for you, puts on clothes, it showers you.
It was so unrealistic because they only had one household income.
Yeah, that's right.
But then here's what happens when the Apple robot gets lonely.
Is this a joke? I'm waiting for a punchline.
I mean, what if you come home on after traveling? It's Friday afternoon.
Move on your wife?
No, the robot's like, where have you been? I have not been given any tasks. I've cleaned the house 17 times.
It's gonna be like
the carpet's just worn down because
I saw Bobby and Sue next door, and they've been interacting with their robot all week.
It just starts getting angry.
Have you seen Ex Machina or whatever?
Oh, that's a great movie.
Is that
that's what's Alicia Vikander? She's smoking. She's a Tomb Raider chick.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that again just to
that would be
re-ground myself.
Honestly, we should all probably rewatch all of them.
Yeah,
right? Like Her was another one.
I love Her. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I love her too.
I love her.
All right. Well, so we'll wrap it up there. We'll call it.
So next week.
Next week is going to be AI and marketing. We're going to try our number 2 with Tim Hickel. And hopefully, now that we've got a better professional setup here, that it will go off without a hitch. And then following up, the next week will be AI and personal finance. And we have this really interesting guy who's a CFO, but he also is somewhat of a developer building some interesting AI tools.
Looking forward to that one.
So thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you next week.